Trevor Hayes was 28 years old when his fiancée vanished at Hartsfield-Jackson Airport, leaving him alone with their 11-month-old daughter and 3 pieces of luggage meant for Thanksgiving in Chicago. He tried calling, straight to voicemail. Airport security showed him the footage, Jasmine walking out through a different terminal, pulling a suitcase he'd never seen her pack. Then came the text, "I can't do this anymore. You'll figure it out." When Trevor got home that night, he found the emails. 6 months of an affair with a wealthy London developer. Jasmine's words to her lover, "I'll leave the baby with him at the airport. He's too soft to chase me." She'd drained their savings. $47,000 gone. She thought Trevor was weak, thought his modest engineer's salary meant he'd never amount to anything. 6 years later, she would freeze at who was holding his hand at an elite charity gala. She had no idea what she'd just set in motion. What Trevor would build from that airport floor would destroy everything she thought she'd won. But that moment, holding his crying daughter in an empty apartment, he made a decision that would change everything. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from, and subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you need to hear. Trevor Hayes checked his phone for the 20th time in 45 minutes, shifting his weight from one foot to another, as he stood near Gate B7 at Hartsfield-Jackson Airport. Their flight to Chicago was scheduled to board in 15 minutes, and Jasmine still hadn't returned from the restroom. Beside him, 11-month-old Zoe squirmed in her stroller, her tiny face scrunching up with growing discomfort. "It's okay, sweetie," Trevor murmured, crouching down to adjust her blanket. "Mommy will be back soon." But even as he said the words, an uneasy feeling crept into his stomach. Jasmine had been acting strange all morning, checking her phone constantly, answering his questions with distracted one-word responses, and insisting on carrying her oversized purse instead of packing it in their checked luggage. Trevor dialed Jasmine's number again. The call went straight to voicemail, just like the previous 6 attempts. "Hey, it's me again. The flight's boarding soon. Please, call me back." Zoe's whimpers turned into full-blown cries, drawing concerned glances from nearby passengers. Trevor lifted her from the stroller, bouncing her gently. "I know, baby girl. I know you're hungry." The bottle in the diaper bag was getting cold, and Zoe was well past her usual feeding time. After another 10 minutes of increasingly worried pacing, Trevor approached the gate desk. "Excuse me," he said to the attendant. "My fiancée went to the restroom almost an hour ago and I can't reach her. Is there any way to make an announcement?" The attendant made a quick call, but the airport-wide page for Jasmine Porter went unanswered. By now, other passengers were lining up to board, and Zoe's cries had become inconsolable. "Sir," a security supervisor approached, having overheard Trevor's situation. "If you're concerned, we can check the security cameras." Trevor nodded gratefully, following the supervisor to a small office, while pushing the stroller with one hand and cradling Zoe with the other. The supervisor typed quickly on his keyboard, pulling up footage from the past hour. "There!" The supervisor pointed to a grainy image on the screen. "That's the woman you described, correct?" Trevor's heart sank as he watched Jasmine hurrying through Terminal C, in the opposite direction from their gate. She pulled a rolling suitcase he'd never seen before, her movements purposeful and quick, not those of someone lost or confused. "I don't understand," Trevor whispered, more to himself than the supervisor. "That's not even... We're in Terminal B. Why would she—" His phone buzzed in his pocket. With trembling hands, he shifted Zoe to read the message from Jasmine's number. "I can't do this anymore. You'll figure it out. Don't try to find me." The words blurred on the screen as Trevor read them again and again. Around him, the airport continued its constant motion, announcements echoing overhead, passengers rushing past, the hum of countless conversations. But Trevor stood frozen, his world suddenly tilted on its axis. Final boarding call for Flight 2187 to Chicago O'Hare. The announcement cut through his daze. Through the office window, He could see the last passengers disappearing down the jet bridge. "Sir?" The supervisor's voice was gentle. "Do you need me to call someone?" Trevor looked down at Zoe, her little face red from crying, her tiny fists balled up in frustration. She needed her bottle, a diaper change, her nap. She needed stability and comfort. She needed her mother. But Jasmine was gone. "No," Trevor managed, his voice hollow. "No, thank you for your help. I need to cancel our tickets." The walk back to the gate desk felt endless. Trevor moved mechanically, going through the motions of canceling their reservations while Zoe continued to cry. The sympathetic gate agent processed the refund without the usual cancellation fees, her eyes full of pity that Trevor couldn't bear to acknowledge. The drive home was silent, except for the soft sounds of Zoe's breathing from the back seat. She had finally fallen asleep, exhausted from crying, after Trevor gave her a bottle in the parking garage. The late November sun cast long shadows across the highway as Trevor navigated through Atlanta traffic, his mind spinning with questions he couldn't answer. What had he missed? When had Jasmine planned this? Why the airport? Why today? The questions circled endlessly, each one leading to another, none offering any clarity. The weight of confusion and disbelief pressed against his chest, making it hard to breathe. Traffic lights blurred together. Street signs became meaningless shapes. Trevor drove on autopilot, his body somehow remembering the way home, while his mind struggled to process the reality that the woman he loved, the mother of his child, had simply walked away. The key in the apartment lock felt heavier than usual as Trevor balanced Zoe's sleeping form against his shoulder. The door swung open to darkness, and the silence hit him like a physical force. He'd always come home to music playing, or the TV running in the background, or Jasmine's voice calling out a greeting. His hand found the light switch, illuminating their modest two-bedroom apartment. Nothing seemed obviously different at first glance. The same beige walls, the same family photos, the same stack of magazines on the coffee table. But as Trevor walked toward Zoe's room, subtle wrongness crept in. The slight gap in the shoe rack where Jasmine's favorite boots should be. The missing coat from its usual hook. Trevor gently laid Zoe in her crib, careful not to wake her. She stirred slightly, tiny fingers curling around her stuffed elephant, but stayed asleep. He stood there for a moment, watching her peaceful breathing, before forcing himself to face what waited in their bedroom. The closet door was partially open. Trevor flicked on the light, and his breath caught. Jasmine's side was half empty, hangers swinging slightly in the air-conditioning breeze. Her designer dresses, her work clothes, her favorite sweaters, gone. But some things remained, deliberately left behind. The Christmas sweater his mom had knitted her, the dress she'd worn at their engagement party, the T-shirt she'd borrowed from him so often it had become hers. Trevor moved methodically through the room, noting what was missing. The jewelry box on her dresser, gone. The stack of important documents they kept in the desk drawer, rifled through, her passport and birth certificate taken. Their wedding planning binder still sat on the bookshelf. Sticky notes and magazine clippings marking pages they'd discussed just last week. His hands were steady as he opened her nightstand drawer. At first glance, nothing seemed out of place, just the usual clutter of hair ties, hand lotion, and old magazines. But when he lifted the stack of magazines, he found a manila envelope underneath, thick with papers. Trevor sat on the edge of the bed and opened the envelope. The first page was an email printout, the sender's name making his stomach clench. Reginald Whitmore. The date was from 6 months ago, shortly after Jasmine's real estate marketing conference in London. "My dearest Jasmine," the email began, "last night was magical. I haven't stopped thinking about you since you left my hotel room. The way you lit up when I described my penthouse in Mayfair. You deserve that life. Not some cramped apartment with a man who'll never give you the luxury you were meant for." Trevor's hands trembled slightly as he read email after email. The story unfolded in digital timestamps and intimate words. Reginald was 52, a commercial real estate developer who'd made millions in the London market. He'd pursued Jasmine aggressively after meeting her at the conference, promising her everything she'd ever wanted: designer clothes, European vacations, a life of luxury. One email from Jasmine made bile rise in Trevor's throat. "Trevor's sweet, but his engineer's salary is suffocating me. He talks about saving for a house, but at this rate, we'll be in that apartment forever. I want more. I deserve more." The most recent email was dated 3 weeks ago. "Reggie, I'm ready. Book the ticket. I'll leave the baby with him at the airport. Clean break. He's too soft to chase me, too afraid of confrontation. By the time he figures out what happened, I'll be starting my new life with you in London." A small black phone fell from the envelope, a cheap burner model. Trevor turned it on, finding dozens of texts between Jasmine and someone saved as K. With growing horror, he realized K was Keisha, someone Jasmine had claimed was just a work friend. "He doesn't check the bank statements," one text read. "I've been moving money every payday. Small amounts at first, then bigger ones. Almost 50K now. By the time he notices, I'll be gone." Trevor's hands shook as he opened their online banking app. Their joint savings account, the one they'd been building for a house down payment, for Zoe's future, showed a balance of $3,247.89. The transaction history told the story. Careful withdrawals over 3 months, always timed around paydays when legitimate deposits would mask the drainage. From Zoe's room came the first whimpers that would soon become full cries. Trevor sat on the bedroom floor, surrounded by printed betrayal, as his daughter's cries grew louder. The clock on the nightstand blinked 3 a.m., its red numbers illuminating the scattered emails that detailed the calculated destruction of his family. Each page he held represented another lie, another moment of premeditation. This wasn't a sudden decision or a breakdown. This was months of planning, of playing the loving fiancé while systematically preparing to abandon their child. The emails trembled in his hands as Zoe's cries echoed through the apartment, the sound of one world ending and another, harder one beginning. Sunlight crept through the blinds, finding Trevor slumped in the kitchen chair. He hadn't slept. Zoe sat in her high chair, banana pieces scattered across the tray as she grabbed at them with clumsy fingers. His phone felt heavy in his hand as he dialed his mother's number. "Mom!" His voice cracked. The events spilled out in a confused jumble. The airport, the texts, the empty closet, the stolen money. Gloria's sharp intake of breath was followed by immediate action. "Baby, I'm coming. Give me 48 hours to pack and arrange things here. You need help with that precious girl." Trevor's next call was to his supervisor at the aerospace firm. "Mark, I need emergency family leave. My fiancée." He swallowed hard. "She abandoned us yesterday. I'm alone with Zoe." Mark's response was immediate. "Take whatever time you need. We'll sort out the paperwork later." The morning passed in a blur of phone calls and practical arrangements. Trevor found himself moving mechanically through Zoe's routine. Diaper changes, bottles, naps, while his mind raced with logistics. Their rent was $2,100 a month. The remaining savings wouldn't cover 2 months. His salary alone couldn't sustain it. Gloria arrived exactly 47 hours later, stepping off the plane with determination in her eyes. She hugged Trevor fiercely, then immediately took Zoe from his arms. "You look exhausted, baby. When's the last time you slept?" "I don't know," Trevor admitted. "Mom, I don't even know where to start." "We start with a lawyer," Gloria said firmly. "Then we find you a smaller place. One step at a time." Lawrence Mitchell's law office was modern and sleek, but the attorney himself had kind eyes behind his professional demeanor. He reviewed the evidence Trevor had gathered, the emails, bank statements, airport footage request. The burner phone texts. "This is actually very clear-cut," Lawrence said, making notes. "She's abandoned both you and the child. We'll file for emergency full custody immediately." The documented theft helps our case significantly. He looked up at Trevor. "Document everything. Keep a detailed timeline. Take photos of what she left behind. We need to establish this was premeditated." That afternoon, Trevor and Gloria toured a small studio apartment across town. The rent was $850, tight but manageable on his salary. The manager agreed to let him move in immediately given the circumstances. "It's small," Trevor said apologetically to his mother as they stood in the empty studio. Gloria squeezed his arm. "It's temporary. Everything is temporary except your love for that baby girl." They spent the next 2 days moving. Trevor photographed everything in the old apartment first. The abandoned clothes, the wedding planning binder, the family photos Jasmine hadn't taken. He filed a police report about the stolen money, providing bank statements and the burner phone as evidence. The officer was sympathetic, but realistic. With Jasmine overseas, recovery would be difficult. At night, after Zoe was asleep in her pack-and-play, and Gloria had retired to the pull-out couch, Trevor sat on his air mattress reviewing their new budget. His engineering salary would cover the basic: rent, utilities, food, daycare. But the stolen savings had been their safety net, their future. The betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was calculated financial sabotage. She'd timed it perfectly, draining their resources while maintaining the illusion of their shared life. Each withdrawal represented another moment she'd looked at their baby daughter and still chosen deception. 2 months crawled by. Gloria became Zoe's constant caregiver while Trevor worked, their small studio taking on a routine of its own. Then, the envelope arrived. Thick legal papers from a prestigious London law firm. Trevor's hands shook as he read the divorce petition. Jasmine wanted the split finalized quickly, but with conditions. She demanded a $25,000 settlement, claiming she'd sacrificed her career prospects during their relationship. The audacity of asking for money after stealing their savings made him laugh bitterly. Buried in the paperwork was a photograph, clearly included to make a point. Jasmine and Reginald at some expensive London restaurant, crystal glasses and fine china visible. She wore a black cocktail dress that probably cost more than their monthly rent. On her left hand, catching the restaurant's soft lighting, was an enormous diamond ring. At least 3 carats, Trevor estimated, remembering how proud he'd been to give her the 1-carat engagement ring she'd left behind. The contrast was deliberate, a message about the life she'd chosen instead of their small family. Trevor stared at the photo, at Jasmine's triumphant smile, at the way she leaned into Reginald's expensive suit. 2 months ago, this image would have devastated him. Now he felt something different stirring in his chest. Not anger, not pain, but pure determination. Trevor sat in Lawrence Mitchell's office, pen hovering over the divorce papers. The morning sun filtered through vertical blinds, creating strips of light across the mahogany desk. He glanced one last time at Jasmine's outrageous settlement demand, then began signing each marked page with deliberate strokes. "You're making the right choice," Lawrence said, watching Trevor initial the custody agreement. "She abandoned her child. She stole your savings. She doesn't get to demand compensation for that." Trevor nodded, his jaw tight. He pulled out the restaurant photograph, Jasmine draped in designer clothes, that massive ring catching the light. Without hesitation, he slipped it into the manila folder where he kept all the documentation of her betrayal. The folder went into his briefcase, where it would stay permanently. "File everything today," Trevor instructed, standing up. "I want this finished." Back at work, Trevor threw himself into his projects with an intensity that surprised even him. The satellite communication system he'd been developing showed promise for revolutionary tracking capabilities. During a presentation to the executive team, Trevor outlined potential military applications that made the CEO lean forward in his chair. "Hayes, this is exceptional work," Richard Morton said after the meeting. "I'm promoting you to senior engineer effective immediately. We need you leading more projects like this." The promotion meant a significant salary bump, enough to move out of the studio apartment within a few months. But Trevor had bigger plans brewing. Each night, after tucking Zoe into bed and kissing her forehead, he sat at his small desk and worked on his own proprietary software. Gloria worried about his schedule. "Baby, you need more sleep," she'd say, finding him still coding at midnight. "I'll sleep when I've built something, Mom," he'd respond, rubbing his tired eyes. "Something that matters." His mother had become Zoe's rock, teaching the toddler letters and numbers, taking her to the park, creating the stability Trevor knew his daughter desperately needed. When Zoe stopped asking, "Where, Mama?" during her second year, Gloria held Trevor as he finally allowed himself to cry with relief. During the day, Trevor began attending every industry conference and networking event he could find. He traded his old suits for tailored ones, practiced his elevator pitch, and collected business cards from venture capitalists and defense contractors. He learned to speak their language, to present his ideas with confidence, to build relationships that could prove valuable later. "The satellite tracking system you're proposing," a Pentagon contractor told him during one conference, "could revolutionize global defense capabilities. Keep developing it." Trevor opened a new bank account at a different bank, automatically transferring 30% of each paycheck into savings. The balance grew slowly but steadily. On his home office wall, he created a vision board, photos of successful tech startups, innovative satellite systems, beautiful homes, and at the center, a recent picture of Zoe laughing on a swing set. "What's all that, Daddy?" Zoe asked one morning, pointing at the board. Trevor lifted her onto his lap. "That's our future, baby girl. We're going to build something amazing." His colleagues noticed the change in him. The quiet engineer who'd once eaten lunch alone at his desk now commanded attention in meetings, challenged conventional thinking, and pushed for innovative solutions. His satellite communication designs weren't just technically sound, they were marketable, practical, and potentially revolutionary. Late one evening, as Trevor reviewed code on his laptop, his phone buzzed. Isaiah Banks, a former colleague who'd left the company 6 months earlier, was calling. "Trevor, you got a minute?" Isaiah's voice held barely contained excitement. "I've been watching your work on those satellite systems. I'm starting something new. Defense tech, focused on satellite applications. I want you as my co-founder and CTO." Trevor sat up straighter, fully alert despite the late hour. "Tell me more." "I've got connections at the Department of Defense," Isaiah continued. "They're looking for exactly the kind of tracking capabilities you've been developing. With your technical expertise and my business development background, we could build something significant." Through the apartment's thin walls, Trevor could hear Zoe's soft breathing from her small bedroom, mixed with the gentle sounds of Gloria, watching late-night television. Everything he'd done since that day at the airport, the long hours, the networking, the secret development work, had been leading to an opportunity like this. "When do you want to meet?" Trevor asked, already reaching for his notebook. Trevor arrived early at the coffee shop, a worn leather portfolio tucked under his arm containing months of technical specifications and design documents. The morning crowd had thinned, leaving scattered customers tapping on laptops or reading newspapers. He chose a corner table, ordered black coffee, and waited. Isaiah Banks entered precisely at 9, dressed sharply, but without the corporate stiffness Trevor remembered. He carried himself differently now. There was an energy, an entrepreneurial spark that hadn't been there when they worked together. "Trevor," Isaiah grinned, extending his hand. "Man, you look focused." "Had to be," Trevor replied, returning the handshake firmly. Things change fast when you're suddenly a single parent. They settled in, and Isaiah didn't waste time with small talk. He pulled out his tablet, pulling up presentation slides with market analysis, defense sector projections, and potential military applications for satellite tracking technology. The Department of Defense is desperate for better tracking capabilities, Isaiah explained, his voice low but intense. Current systems are outdated, vulnerable to interference. Your designs? They solve problems the military hasn't even publicly admitted to having yet. Trevor opened his portfolio, spreading out technical diagrams. The core innovation is here, a way to maintain satellite locks even through severe electromagnetic interference. But it needs serious development work. That's why I need you as CTO. Isaiah leaned forward. I've got the connections, the business plan, the potential clients, but you're the only engineer I know who can actually build this. The risk was enormous. Trevor had rebuilt his savings to $42,000. Not much, but enough to give Zoe some security. Isaiah was asking him to invest most of it into their startup. Talk to me about the numbers, Trevor said. Real numbers. For the next hour, they dove deep into financials, market projections, and development timelines. Isaiah had already secured a small office space and had verbal interest from 2 defense contractors. They would need at least 18 months of runway before any significant revenue. I won't sugarcoat it, Isaiah said. We'll be working 18-hour days, living on ramen noodles, and there's no guarantee of success. But if we hit, we're talking 9 figures within 5 years. Trevor thought about Zoe, now 3 years old and thriving in preschool thanks to Gloria's constant presence. His mother had created stability while he rebuilt their lives. She deserved better than their cramped apartment. Zoe deserved every opportunity he could provide. I'm in, Trevor said finally. But we do this right. Everything documented, everything legal, everything transparent. They spent another hour outlining equity splits, responsibilities, and timeline milestones. Horizon Defense Systems was born on coffee shop napkins and notepads, but Trevor could already see its potential. The next months blurred together. They leased a small office in a dated building, set up workstations, and began the grueling process of building something from nothing. Trevor coded until his eyes burned, refined algorithms until dawn, and still made it home to read Zoe bedtime stories. Gloria watched him with concern, but supported his vision. You're doing this for her, she would say, packing him lunches for long days at the office. Just don't forget to live a little too. One evening, as Trevor reviewed contract proposals, Isaiah entered his office with an unusual expression. You need to see this, he said, placing his phone on Trevor's desk. My London contact sent it. The screen showed a financial news article about Reginald Whitmore's real estate empire facing massive losses. Buried in the text were hints of leveraged properties, questionable loans, and mounting debt. There's more, Isaiah swiped to a tabloid photo. Jasmine stood in an expensive black dress at some charity event, her face tight with strain. Reginald Whitmore, visibly drunk, had his arm around a younger woman, openly flirting while Jasmine watched. He's known for this, Isaiah explained. Collects young women, shows them off, moves on. Has a new one every year or two. Trevor studied the photo dispassionately. The woman who had abandoned their daughter for luxury looked trapped in a glossy prison of her own making. He felt nothing. No satisfaction, no pity, no anger. Just calm focus on the empire he was building. That focus paid off 3 months later when Horizon landed its first Department of Defense contract, $2.3 million for initial development of their tracking system. Isaiah burst into Trevor's office, waving the signed document, whooping with joy. That evening, Trevor booked their first real vacation, a week at Disney World for Zoe, Gloria, and himself. Watching his daughter's eyes light up at the news, he hugged her close. We're going to see Mickey Mouse? Zoe squealed, bouncing with excitement. And princesses, and everything else you want, baby girl, Trevor promised, his mother wiping happy tears from her eyes. The glass-walled conference room offered a panoramic view of downtown Atlanta's skyline. Trevor adjusted his tie, studying the thick stack of funding proposals spread across the mahogany table. At 32, he barely recognized his reflection in the windows. Confidence had replaced uncertainty. Success had erased the haunted look he'd worn 4 years ago. Isaiah paced the room, gesturing animatedly as he reviewed the latest venture capital offers. Goldman Sachs is offering the best terms. $50 million, minimal board interference, and they'll fast-track our IPO timeline. Trevor nodded, running calculations in his head. Their satellite tracking technology had revolutionized military communications, and commercial applications were exploding. Major airlines wanted their systems for fleet management. Shipping companies needed better cargo tracking. Even NASA had reached out about potential partnerships. "What's the proposed valuation?" Trevor asked, though he already knew the answer. $180 million, Isaiah grinned. "We're not those two guys in a cramped office anymore, brother. This is the big leagues." Trevor remembered those early days, endless coffee, sleeping on the office couch, racing home to read Zoe bedtime stories. Now, Horizon Defense Systems occupied an entire floor of prime downtown real estate. Their team had grown to 60 people. Government contracts poured in faster than they could handle them. "Let's review the term sheet again," Trevor said, pulling up the documents on his tablet. "I want to make sure we maintain controlling interest." They spent hours dissecting every clause and condition. When they finally signed the preliminary agreement, Isaiah insisted on opening the bottle of champagne he'd been saving. "To building something that matters," Isaiah raised his glass. Trevor's phone buzzed, a text from his real estate agent. The offer on the Buckhead house had been accepted. He smiled, thinking of Zoe's reaction when she saw her new room with its window seat overlooking the garden. The next few weeks passed in a blur of lawyers, paperwork, and moving boxes. The modern glass and stone house in Buckhead's most exclusive neighborhood felt surreal after their modest apartment. Trevor hired Sophie, an experienced nanny, to help Gloria with school pickups and activities while maintaining their family dynamic. Zoe thrived at Woodland Academy, making friends quickly and excelling in her kindergarten classes. Gloria decorated her new guest suite with family photos, finally having the space she deserved after sacrificing everything to help them rebuild. It was at an intellectual property law conference that Trevor met Keisha Thornton. He was giving a keynote speech about innovation in satellite technology when he noticed her in the audience, sharp eyes, elegant in a navy suit, taking detailed notes while others looked bored. During the reception, she approached him with specific questions about patent protection for their tracking algorithms. Her intelligence and direct manner intrigued him. No false flattery or networking small talk, just incisive analysis and genuine curiosity. "Most keynote speakers dodge technical questions," she said, sipping mineral water. "You actually seem to know your subject matter. Most lawyers avoid challenging speakers directly," Trevor countered, finding himself smiling. "You don't seem concerned about ruffling feathers." They talked for an hour, moving from patent law to favorite books, to growing up in Detroit versus Chicago. When she gave him her card, Trevor knew he would call. Their first date was dinner at a small Ethiopian restaurant. Her choice. Keisha listened without judgment when Trevor explained his history with Jasmine, asking thoughtful questions rather than offering pity. "You turned betrayal into an empire," she observed. "That takes more than ambition. It takes character." They took things slowly, both aware of the stakes. Trevor waited 6 months before introducing Keisha to Zoe. Wanting to be certain, they met at the Atlanta Botanical Gardens, neutral territory where Zoe could be comfortable. "Miss Keisha!" Zoe exclaimed, immediately drawn to Keisha's warm smile and gentle questions about her favorite flowers. As months passed, Keisha became a natural part of their family rhythms. Sunday brunches, movie nights, impromptu dance parties in the kitchen. She never tried to replace Jasmine, instead building her own authentic relationship with Zoe based on shared interests in books and art. On Zoe's 6th birthday, Trevor transformed the backyard into an enchanted garden party. Fairies' lights twinkled in the trees, and a professional face painter turned giggling kindergartners into butterflies and tigers. The moment crystallized as Trevor watched Keisha help Zoe lean forward to blow out her candles, Gloria wiping happy tears nearby. His mother caught his eye and nodded slightly. She saw it too. This was the family they were always meant to have. Isaiah burst through Trevor's office door without knocking, waving a thick envelope. His usual composed demeanor had given way to barely contained excitement. "They want us. All of us!" Isaiah slapped the document onto Trevor's glass desk. Trevor looked up from his laptop, raising an eyebrow. "Who wants what?" "Global Aerospace Corporation." Isaiah leaned forward, palms flat on the desk. $340 million. Full acquisition offer. They want our entire satellite tracking division and the whole team. Trevor's hands stilled over his keyboard. The number echoed in his mind. 340 million. He leaned back in his ergonomic chair, letting the magnitude sink in. "Say that number again," Trevor said quietly. 340 with 6 zeros behind it. Isaiah's grin threatened to split his face. "We did it, brother." That tiny office, those all-nighters, the military contracts, it was all leading to this. Trevor stood up and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Atlanta. 6 years ago, he'd been standing in an airport terminal, holding a crying baby, watching his life implode. Now he was about to become a multimillionaire at 34. The next 3 months dissolved into endless meetings with lawyers, accountants, and global aerospace executives. Due diligence teams combed through every line of code, every contract, every patent filing. Trevor barely saw Keisha except for quick dinners between negotiations. When the acquisition finally closed, Trevor sat in his home office staring at the bank notification. $89 million after taxes. He called his financial advisor immediately to set up Zoe's education trust fund. His 11-year-old daughter would never worry about college costs or graduate school. "You're quiet tonight," Keisha observed later that evening as they sat on his back deck, sharing a bottle of wine. They'd been together 18 months now, their relationship growing deeper and more certain with each passing day. "Just thinking about what matters," Trevor replied, taking her hand. They'd been discussing marriage lately. Not if, but when. Money changes things. Money just amplifies who you already are, Keisha said wisely. "And you've always been someone who takes care of others." She was right. Trevor had already contacted several single-parent support organizations, establishing scholarships and emergency funds. He remembered those first desperate months after Jasmine left, how close he'd come to financial disaster. He diversified his newfound wealth carefully, working with investment advisors to build a commercial real estate portfolio. The irony wasn't lost on him, using real estate to secure his future, while Reginald Whitmore's empire crumbled overseas. The invitation to the Southeastern Black Business Leaders Gala arrived on heavy cream cardstock with gold embossing. It was the most prestigious charity event in Atlanta's business community, attended by senators, CEOs, and old money families. "Look how far we've come," Isaiah laughed during their final meeting at Horizon's offices. "Remember when we couldn't afford office furniture? Now we're invited to galas at the Four Seasons." Trevor asked Keisha to be his date, watching her face light up as she accepted. They went shopping together for formal wear, her selecting a stunning emerald silk gown, him choosing a perfectly tailored black tuxedo. The morning of the gala, Trevor was reviewing some investment proposals when an email notification caught his eye. A business reporter from the London Financial Times requested comment on growing rumors regarding Reginald Whitmore's real estate empire entering bankruptcy proceedings. Trevor forwarded the email to Isaiah with a simple note. Karma works in mysterious ways. That evening, Trevor adjusted his bow tie in the mirror, taking in the complete picture. Keisha emerged from the guest room in her emerald gown, drawing appreciative gasps from both Gloria and Zoe. "Daddy, you look like James Bond," Zoe exclaimed, twirling in her age-appropriate party dress. At 7, she was growing into a poised young lady who brought joy to everyone around her. Gloria, elegant in silver, hugged Trevor tightly. "Your father would be so proud," she whispered. Their convoy of 2 luxury cars pulled up to the Four Seasons circular drive. Valets opened doors as camera flashes popped. The gala was a major society event. Trevor helped Keisha from the car, then lifted Zoe down carefully to protect her dress. The hotel's grand ballroom sparkled with crystal chandeliers and elegant table settings. Atlanta's business elite mingled over champagne, making deals and trading influence. Trevor held Keisha's hand on one side and Zoe's on the other, Gloria walking beside them with perfect poise. They were no longer the broken family from that airport terminal. They had rebuilt, reformed, and emerged stronger. Trevor smiled, ready to celebrate Horizon's success with the city's power players. The Four Seasons ballroom sparkled like a jewel box, crystal chandeliers casting warm light across marble floors and elegant table settings. Soft jazz from the live band floated through the air as Atlanta's elite circulated in designer evening wear, champagne flutes catching the light. The annual Southeastern Black Business Leaders Gala represented the pinnacle of the city's social calendar. Trevor stood near a Roman-style column, engaged in an animated discussion with State Senator Marcus Williams about satellite technology's role in rural broadband access. Keisha, resplendent in her emerald silk gown, charmed a circle of corporate executives nearby with her extensive knowledge of intellectual property law. "And that's why the infrastructure bill needs stronger technology provisions," Senator Williams said, gesturing with his drink. "We can't leave rural communities behind." Zoe squeezed Trevor's hand, gazing wide-eyed at the opulent surroundings. Her navy blue party dress had been carefully chosen for the occasion, making her look like a princess from the storybooks she loved. Gloria had styled her hair in elegant twists, adorned with tiny pearl clips. "Daddy," Zoe whispered, tugging gently at his sleeve, "can I have another strawberry from the chocolate fountain?" Trevor smiled down at his daughter. "After dinner, sweetheart." "Remember what Grandma said about protecting your pretty dress?" The senator chuckled warmly. "My granddaughter's the same age. They're all about those chocolate fountains." Trevor nodded, turning slightly to scan the room as he responded. And then he saw her. Across the vast ballroom, through gaps in the mingling crowd, stood Jasmine Porter. 6 years had changed her. She was thinner now, almost too thin, her cheekbones sharp beneath expertly applied makeup. Her black Dior gown was beautiful, but subtly dated, like something from a previous season's collection. The confident swagger he remembered had been replaced by something harder, more brittle. Beside her stood Reginald Whitmore, and the contrast with Trevor's memories was stark. The once imposing real estate tycoon looked shrunken somehow, his designer tuxedo hanging slightly loose on his frame. His face was deeply lined, and he clutched a roc's glass of amber liquid like a lifeline, already swaying slightly despite the early hour. As if feeling Trevor's gaze, Jasmine looked up. Their eyes met across the crowded room. The champagne flute in her manicured hand trembled, nearly slipping from her grip. All the color drained from her face as her gaze moved from Trevor to Keisha's elegant form beside him. When her eyes finally dropped to Zoe, perfectly poised in her party dress, Jasmine's carefully painted lips parted in silent shock. Trevor felt a curious sense of calm settle over him. This moment had lived in his imagination for 6 years, playing out in 1,000 different ways during sleepless nights. But now that it was here, he felt only a crystalline clarity. "Senator," Trevor said smoothly, never taking his eyes from Jasmine, Please excuse me for a moment. There's someone I need to address. The senator followed Trevor's gaze, years of political instincts helping him read the situation instantly. Of course. Of course. We'll continue our discussion later. Keisha noticed the shift in Trevor's demeanor and gracefully extracted herself from her conversation. She moved to Trevor's side, placing a supportive hand on his arm. Her presence was steady, grounding. The crowd between them seemed to part instinctively as Trevor began walking forward, each step measured and deliberate. Zoe stayed close to his side, one small hand trustingly in his. The usual buzz of conversation diminished as people sensed the building tension, turning to watch the tableau unfold. Jasmine remained frozen in place as they approached, her eyes darting between Trevor, Keisha, and Zoe like a trapped animal seeking escape. Reginald seemed oblivious to the drama, focused on signaling a waiter for another drink. The 3 feet of space between them when Trevor stopped felt like both an ocean and a heartbeat. The years of abandonment, betrayal, and ultimately triumph compressed into this single moment. Trevor's voice, when he spoke, was perfectly composed, carrying just far enough to reach Jasmine's ears. Jasmine, it's been a while. 95% third person, 85% 911. Jasmine's perfectly painted lips trembled as she stared at Zoe, tears welling in her eyes and threatening to ruin her careful makeup. Her voice came out as barely more than a whisper, cracking with emotion. Is that my baby?" Zoe pressed closer to Trevor's leg, her small fingers tightening around his hand, as she looked up at him with confusion in her eyes. "Daddy, who is that lady?" The innocence of the question hung in the air between them. Trevor placed his free hand protectively on Zoe's shoulder, his touch gentle but firm. The crowd around them had grown quieter, the elegant partygoers pretending not to watch while stealing glances at the unfolding drama. "Sweetheart," Trevor said, his voice calm and clear, "I'd like you to meet Miss Keisha properly. She's my fiancée." He smiled warmly at Keisha, who stepped closer to them, her emerald dress catching the light from the chandeliers above. "And this woman," he continued, his tone measured as he gestured toward Jasmine, "is the person who gave birth to you. But your real family, the ones who've been there to love you, raise you, and watch you grow, are Miss Keisha and Grandma Gloria." Jasmine's carefully constructed composure crumbled. Mascara-tinted tears tracked down her cheeks as she took an unsteady step forward. "Trevor, please," she begged, her voice raw with desperation. "I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. I want to see her. I need to see her. I'm her mother. Jasmine." Reginald's voice cut through her pleading, thick with alcohol and irritation. He swayed slightly, gripping his fresh drink. "We're leaving. This is embarrassing." He tugged at her arm, but she pulled away from him. Trevor's gaze shifted to Reginald, his eyes hardening as he took in the man who had helped destroy his family. "So you're the man," he said, each word precise and cutting. "The one worth abandoning an infant for." His lips curved into a knowing smile that held no warmth. "Tell me, how's that bankruptcy filing going?" Color flooded Reginald's face, turning his weathered complexion an ugly shade of red. He lifted his drink to his lips with an unsteady hand, some of the liquid sloshing over the rim. Before anyone could react, Jasmine lunged forward, her arms outstretched toward Zoe. "Baby, please!" Keisha moved with the swift grace of a lioness protecting her cubs, positioning herself between Jasmine and Zoe. Her voice was steel wrapped in silk. "You don't get to touch her," she said, drawing herself up to her full height. "You didn't earn that right. You gave it up in an airport terminal 6 years ago." Zoe had shrunk behind Trevor's leg, frightened by the sudden movement and raised voices. Gloria, who had been watching from nearby, quickly moved to her side, wrapping a protective arm around her granddaughter. "You!" Jasmine's voice rose, hysteria creeping in as she pointed an accusing finger at Trevor. "You planned this whole thing. You knew I'd be here tonight. You orchestrated this entire humiliation. The crowd had given up any pretense of not watching. Phones had appeared in hands, recording the scene discreetly. Trevor remained perfectly still, his composure a stark contrast to Jasmine's increasing hysteria. Isaiah Banks appeared at Trevor's side, his expression grave as he surveyed the scene. He'd witnessed everything from across the ballroom and chose this moment to deliver the final blow. "Ms. Porter," he said, his voice carrying clearly, "I thought I recognized you. My law firm received an interesting subpoena last week, a federal fraud investigation involving Reginald Whitmore's network of shell companies." He paused, letting the words sink in. "Your name appears on multiple financial documents. The FBI is particularly interested in some transfers dating back to 2021. The color drained from Jasmine's face so rapidly it was as if someone had pulled a plug. Her head whipped around to look at Reginald, but he was already retreating, making his way through the crowd toward the nearest exit without a backward glance. "Reggie!" she called after him, panic rising in her voice. "Reginald, wait!" Two security guards in dark suits appeared, responding to signals from concerned event staff. As they approached, Jasmine's composure completely shattered. She began screaming, her voice echoing off the ballroom's high ceilings. "I'm her mother! You can't keep her from me! She's my daughter!" Lawrence Mitchell materialized from the crowd like a well-dressed guardian angel, his silver hair gleaming under the chandeliers. The attorney's presence at the gala had been fortuitous. He'd been entertaining clients at a nearby table when the confrontation began. Now, he stepped forward with practiced smoothness, extracting a business card from his suit jacket with deliberate precision. "Ms. Porter," he said, extending the card between two fingers, "I'm Lawrence Mitchell, Mr. Hayes's attorney of record. Let me be explicitly clear. Mr. Hayes has full legal custody of Zoe. You abandoned your child, documented by airport security footage, text messages, and your own emails. Any attempt at contact requires a court order." His tone softened a fraction, though his words remained razor-sharp. "Given your current legal situation, I think we both know you won't be getting one." The security guards had reached Jasmine now, their hands hovering near her elbows without touching. She snatched the card from Lawrence's hand, mascara trails marking her cheeks like war paint. "You can't do this," she whispered, but the fight had drained from her voice. "She's my flesh and blood." "Blood doesn't raise children," Lawrence replied simply. "Actions do. Please exit quietly. You've caused enough of a scene." The security guards began guiding Jasmine toward the door. She didn't resist, her designer heels clicking against the marble floor as smartphone cameras tracked her departure. The whispers followed her like a wave. "That's Trevor Hayes's ex. Left him at the airport with their baby. Federal investigation." Trevor felt Zoe trembling against his leg and made a quick decision. "Time to go home, princess," he said softly. He looked at Keisha and Gloria, who both nodded in silent agreement. They slipped out through a side entrance, avoiding the main lobby where Jasmine's escort was likely still in progress. The drive home was quiet, broken only by Zoe's occasional yawns. Gloria hummed softly in the back seat beside her granddaughter, a lullaby from Trevor's own childhood. At home, Trevor carried a half-sleeping Zoe up to her room. He helped her change into her favorite unicorn pajamas, while Keisha and Gloria moved around downstairs, making tea and decompressing from the evening's drama. As Trevor tucked the covers around Zoe, her small voice stopped him. "Daddy? Yes, baby? Is that lady going to come back?" Trevor knelt beside her bed, his heart aching at the hint of worry in his daughter's voice. The moonlight streaming through her window cast shadows of dancing butterflies from her mobile onto the walls. "No, baby," he said firmly. "She's not. You're safe with us, with me, Miss Keisha, and Grandma Gloria. We're your family." Zoe nodded, her eyelids heavy. "I love you, Daddy. I love you too, Princess." More than anything in this world. Downstairs, Trevor found Keisha waiting on the living room couch, 2 mugs of chamomile tea steaming on the coffee table. Gloria had retired to her suite in the guest wing, understanding that Trevor needed this moment with his fiancée. As soon as Trevor sat down, Keisha pulled him into her arms. The dam he'd built over 6 years cracked, not breaking completely, but allowing a trickle of emotion to escape. His shoulders shook once, twice. Keisha held him tighter, not speaking, just being present as 6 years of controlled rage, hurt, and vindication washed through him in waves. "I've got you," she whispered, running her fingers through his hair. "We've got you." 18 months later, the sunset painted the sky in shades of pink and gold above Sweet Creek Vineyard. Rows of grapevines stretched toward the horizon, their leaves rustling in the early evening breeze. 50 chairs had been arranged on the manicured lawn, filled with the people who truly mattered in Trevor and Keisha's lives. Zoe practically floated down the aisle in her lavender flower girl dress, scattering rose petals with the serious concentration only a 7-year-old could muster. Her dark curls were crowned with a delicate wreath of baby's breath, matching the flowers in Keisha's bouquet. During the reception, Gloria rose to give her toast, her voice thick with emotion. "Family isn't just blood," she said, looking at Trevor and Keisha. "It's the people who show up, who stay, who build something beautiful from broken pieces. My son did more than survive. He thrived. And in Keisha, he found someone who sees his strength and matches it with her own." Isaiah's best man speech followed, his grin wide and genuine. "Some of you don't know where this story began," he said. "Trevor built an empire from an airport floor. I've learned something watching my best friend these past years. Never count out a man who's been underestimated." That morning, Lawrence had called with updates. Jasmine had accepted a plea deal on fraud charges, 3 years in federal prison. Reginald Whitmore faced a longer sentence and total bankruptcy. A letter had arrived at Lawrence's office, Jasmine's handwriting on the envelope, begging to see Zoe. Trevor filed it away unopened in his office drawer, then straightened his tie for his wedding. I hope you enjoyed that one. Be sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. I've picked out 2 more for you that I think you'll really like.